But it's not just where the remains were found, it's the state they were in, and the things discovered alongside them, that raised a lot of questions. Today's story is about one of the more well-known unsolved mysteries, the very strange disappearance of two Dutch college students who traveled to Panama. They had worked at a local cafe for 6 months to save up for this trip, something they'd dreamed about for a long time. It wasn't just a vacation. It was also a mission. They had planned to explore the country and volunteer with different charities in the rural areas they'd visit. They were both incredibly close, smart, kind, and full of excitement for what was supposed to be the trip of a lifetime. At first, everything went smoothly. The first couple of weeks in Panama were beautiful. They explored, they helped out in villages, and things were going according to plan. But then, things took a sudden and very dark turn. Let's go back to the beginning. On March 15, 2014, Chris Kremers and Liz Ann Freun, two Dutch students, flew to Panama for a 6-week journey that was part vacation, part charitable mission. They had meticulously mapped out their trip, planning to travel across the country while working with various nonprofits. They had even spent months working at a cafe back home to fund it all. They arrived in Panama and, for the first 2 weeks, everything was perfect. They volunteered, they explored, and they experienced the culture, just as planned. By the second week, they made their way to a little town called Boquete. There, they checked into a hostel, a kind of shared living setup that's common for travelers, and continued their adventures. On April 1st, while still in Boquete, they decided to take a hike. This wasn't just any trail, it led around the massive Baru volcano. At the summit, there was a breathtaking 360-degree overlook where, on a clear day, you could see both the Pacific and Atlantic Oceans. Naturally, they wanted to experience it. Now, both Chris and Liz Ann were experienced hikers, but it seems they may not have taken this particular trail as seriously as they should have. The hike was traditionally done with a guide, someone local who knew the terrain, the dangers, and the places where a simple misstep could mean disaster. But the girls decided to go it alone. They also brought along a dog from the hostel, a friendly companion who often tagged along with guests. So, Chris, Liz Ann, and the dog set off into the Panamanian jungle, heading toward that volcano peak, and they would never return the same way again. They brought along a digital camera, in addition to water, their phones, and other basic supplies. That camera would later become very important, because they took a series of photos as they began their journey. That night, the dog they had taken with them returned to the hostel, but the girls didn't. This immediately raised concern for the hostel owners. They searched the surrounding area, hoping to spot them nearby, but found nothing. Deciding there wasn't much else to do in the dark, they chose to wait until morning to see if the girls would return on their own. But the next morning came, and still, no sign of them. Meanwhile, back in the Netherlands, their parents grew worried. They were used to receiving regular text messages from the girls, little updates to let them know they were safe. But the messages had suddenly stopped. That silence set off alarm bells for their families. By the second day after their disappearance, local authorities were alerted. Search crews were quickly organized and began combing the area on foot on April 2nd. They scoured the paths, the woods, and every trail they could reach, but found nothing. The next day, aerial search teams were brought in, sweeping the dense jungle from the sky, looking for any sign of the missing students. Still, no trace of them was discovered. The search stretched on. Then, on April 6th, the girls' parents arrived in Panama. They immediately offered a $30,000 reward for any information that could lead to their daughters. This was a staggering amount of money in that region, the equivalent of $500,000 in a developed country. In an area where many laborers made less than $10 a day, this reward should have sparked a frenzy of activity. People knew the jungle. They knew the trails. It seemed impossible that no one would find something with so much at stake. And yet, the weeks passed. Then months. And there was nothing. No clues. No leads. The girls had simply vanished without a trace. By that time, even the family and investigators feared the worst, that the girls were probably no longer alive. But they desperately needed to know what happened. Then, something unexpected. A local woman discovered Liz Ann Frun's blue backpack, 5 miles from where the girls had supposedly been hiking. 5 miles, through dense, dangerous jungle. A place where even skilled survivalists struggle to navigate. It was unbelievable they, or anyone, could have made it that far on foot in such conditions. The woman who found the backpack said she was familiar with the area and visited it often. She insisted the bag hadn't been there before, that she would have noticed it. Which suggested that the backpack had only recently been placed there. Strangely, the backpack was in remarkably good condition. Nothing was torn or dirty. Everything inside had been carefully packed, as if someone had neatly folded and placed each item before zipping it shut and setting it down by the riverbank. It didn't look like a bag that had been sitting in the jungle for 3 long, brutal months. It looked as if someone had just packed it. Inside the bag, they found sunglasses, a water bottle, some underwear, both girls' phones, and their digital camera, a crucial piece of evidence. With this discovery, search teams shifted their focus. They began combing the area near where the backpack was found. Soon, they uncovered more clues, some of the girls' clothing, neatly folded by the side of the river. But there was still no sign of the girls themselves. 2 more months passed. Then, in the same general area, they finally found human remains. DNA testing confirmed what everyone feared: they belonged to Chris Kremers and Liz Ann Frun. But this discovery only led to more unsettling questions. Mixed in with their bones were remains from at least 3 other people, none of whom were ever identified. That meant that 5 people's remains were found in that single area. Even stranger, when scientists examined the bones, they noticed something unusual: there were no animal scratches. If animals had scavenged the bodies, as they often do in the wild, there would have been clear bite and claw marks. But these bones were clean. No such marks were present. This meant the bones had likely been broken by blunt force, not by animals. Something, or someone, had shattered them. But beyond proving the girls were dead, the remains revealed nothing about how they died, or why. Investigators turned to the girls' phones for answers. The records showed that on April 1st, the very day they started their hike, there was a flurry of distress calls. Multiple emergency calls were made within the first hour of the trek. Whatever happened to Chris and Liz Ann, it happened almost immediately after they stepped onto that trail. None of the emergency calls ever connected. For those first 4 days, as they desperately tried to reach help using their phones, every single attempt failed. Then, Liz Ann Frun's phone battery finally died. But Chris Kremers' phone stayed alive, and whoever had it began turning it off and on sporadically, probably trying to catch a signal. Then something strange happened. On April 6th, someone started entering the wrong PIN codes into Chris's phone, multiple times. Whoever it was failed so many times that the phone eventually locked itself completely. No more codes could be entered. From April 7th to April 10th, there were 77 more attempts to make emergency calls, but none went through. Then, on April 11th, Chris's phone finally went dead. After that, silence. But the phones weren't the only clues. Investigators turned to the digital camera they'd found in the backpack. The camera's memory card began with a set of cheerful photos, the girls smiling and enjoying their hike up the volcano. They looked happy. Relaxed. Carefree. But as the day turned into evening, something changed. Their expressions in the later photos seemed different, tense. Unsure. Possibly even afraid. Then, no pictures at all for several days. Until April 8th. Over the course of the next 3 days, April 8th to April 10th, more than 90 photos were taken. All in total darkness. In the middle of the jungle. And the photos were bizarre. Almost none of the pictures showed the girls themselves, except for one unsettling image that appeared to show the back of Chris Kremers' head, with what looked like blood near her temple. The rest were random, confusing shots of the ground, rocks, thick jungle, and distant ravines. Some showed candy wrappers. One photo showed what looked like the girls' belongings carefully laid out on a rock, as if arranged by someone. Another was taken pointing down into a ravine, possibly hinting that someone, or something, was below. And no one knows who was holding the camera. Were the girls taking these photos? Was it just one of them? Or was it someone else? Then there was picture 509. This photo became infamous. Its file number indicated it should have been the very last image taken on the camera, but it was missing. Deleted. Now, deleting a photo on a digital camera isn't unusual. Maybe the girls accidentally took a blurry shot and cleared it. But even if a picture is deleted that way, a trained investigator can usually recover it using forensic software. But this photo? It was gone. Permanently erased. The kind of deletion that requires connecting the camera to a computer and wiping it with special software, something the girls did not have the equipment to do in the jungle. Someone had intentionally, professionally deleted that photo. All these clues raised troubling questions. The official theory said the girls got lost, wandered deep into the jungle, and tragically fell to their deaths. But that explanation seemed too simple. Too clean. And, for many, too unlikely. How did they travel 5 miles across some of the most dangerous, mountainous jungle terrain, something even highly trained survival experts would struggle to do, with no map, no guide, no proper gear, no light? And if they did fall into a ravine, why were their bones scattered over such a wide area? Why were their remains found mixed with the bones of at least 3 other people? Who were those people? Why were Chris Kremer's bones bleached white, as if treated with chemicals, while Lizanne's bones were not? And why were there no scratches on the bones, as you'd expect if animals had scavenged them? None of it made sense. And those strange nighttime photos, the odd arrangement of gear, the possible image of a body in the ravine, seemed to suggest that maybe someone else was there. Someone who tried to unlock their phone. Someone who placed that backpack by the river, carefully, purposefully. Someone who deleted the last photo, forever. But who? And why? To this day, no one knows the full truth of what happened in that jungle. And maybe, no one ever will.